Have you ever felt something beneath you, something that shouldn't be there, yet you couldn't ignore it? I never imagined that a simple renovation would lead us to uncover a secret buried beneath the very foundation of the house we called home. My name is Emily, and the house we moved into was old, but we loved it for the charm and history it held. It sat on the outskirts of a quiet town, surrounded by tall trees and an eerie stillness that only old houses seem to possess. The type of place where the wind whispers through cracks in the walls, where the past seems to linger in every room. When my dad, a contractor, decided to renovate, it wasn't out of necessity, it was because he loved the idea of preserving the house's beauty. I guess we never realized that the house had its own secrets, ones that would haunt us forever. The renovation started as simple fixes, replacing the kitchen floor, patching up a few holes, and giving the place a fresh coat of paint. But then we found it, the hole in the basement floor. It wasn't there one day and then it was. My dad, being the curious man he is, couldn't resist. "Let's see what's down there," he said, holding up a flashlight and peering into the dark. There was a small hole just big enough to crawl through, and from the way the air rushed up from it, it seemed as if it had been sealed for years, maybe even longer. At first it seemed harmless. Just an old, forgotten crawl space, maybe even some remnants of the past. We were wrong. My dad, always the explorer, decided we had to investigate further. He grabbed a rope and dropped it down. My sister, Jessica, and I followed close behind. The descent was slow, each step down feeling colder than the last. The air grew thick and damp, the musty smell of earth and stone creeping into our lungs. We reached the bottom and found ourselves in a narrow, winding tunnel. It looked like it had been carved from stone, the walls rough and uneven, but somehow well preserved. There was no sign of human habitation, but there was something in the air that made my skin crawl. An unshakable feeling of being watched. The deeper we went, the more it felt like the walls were closing in, pushing us forward. The hallway stretched on, and it felt like we were walking through a forgotten passage of time, somewhere no one had stepped for generations. My heart pounded in my chest, the silence of the place pressing in from all sides, broken only by the occasional drip of water from somewhere far above. We turned a corner, and there it was, an old stone building untouched by the modern world. It wasn't just a room, it was a village, or at least the remains of one. We found ourselves standing in the middle of a small square, with stone buildings surrounding us, some collapsed, others barely standing. There were strange carvings on the walls, runes that didn't make sense, that didn't belong to any culture I recognized. The air was colder here, so cold it felt like winter had crept inside. At first, it seemed like a bizarre historical discovery. This must be a forgotten settlement, I thought. But the further we explored, the more I realized it was something more. A village that hadn't been abandoned but sealed away. And it wasn't just a place for the past. It was a place that was waiting. It wasn't until we reached the heart of the village that I realized we weren't alone. Shadows moved, faint and quick, like something trying to stay out of sight. Jessica swore she saw something dark between two buildings, but when we looked, there was nothing there. My dad dismissed it, but I could feel it, the presence, something that didn't belong. And then the voices started. At first, it was a soft murmur, like a wind rustling through old trees. But as we ventured further, the voices became clearer, like a chant rising from the earth itself. The words were unintelligible, but I could feel them vibrating in my chest, like they were calling to me. The sound seemed to come from all directions, and every step we took, the voices grew louder. The closer we got to the center of the village, the more oppressive the air became. I could barely breathe. It felt like the ground beneath me was pulsing, as though the village was alive, breathing along with us. When we finally reached the center of the village, the chanting stopped. The silence was deafening, the kind of quiet that rings in your ears, heavy and unsettling. The stone buildings around us felt too still, too watchful. I turned to look at my father, but he was staring at something in the distance, his face pale. "We need to leave," he whispered. But it was too late. The figures appeared from the shadows. They were tall, gaunt, and their faces were hollow, their eyes wide and unblinking, staring straight into our souls. Their skin was slick and pale, like they had been hidden in the dark for too long, and their clothes were nothing more than tattered remnants of something older than time. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough to paralyze us with fear. My dad tried to move, but he froze in place, his eyes locked onto the figures. Jessica screamed, but it felt distant, like it wasn't even her voice. And that's when I saw it. The figure in the front, a woman with hair as white as bone, stepped forward, her face twisted into a grotesque grin. She raised her hands slowly as if to beckon us, and the chanting started again. But this time it wasn't from the village. It was from within us. The ground beneath us began to crack, and that's when I realized the village wasn't abandoned. It was never abandoned. The people who had lived here were still here, buried in the earth, waiting for new blood. The figures moved toward us, slow but sure, their eyes never leaving ours. The terror that gripped me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just the fear of being hunted. It was the realization that we were part of something much darker, something that had always been there, hidden in the depths of the earth, waiting for the right moment to rise. We ran, but the path had changed. The walls of the tunnel seemed to shift, closing in, pushing us deeper. We tried to climb back, but the way out was gone. My father, his face now hollow, was no longer with us. He had joined them. His body moved like a puppet, his eyes empty, his soul lost to whatever cursed entity had taken him. As the last light of our torches flickered, I realized the truth. The village wasn't just beneath our house. It was inside us now. The blood had been spilled. And it wasn't just the village that was alive. The dark force that had waited all these years had claimed us. Now we were the ones who would wait. Forever.